Our mini lecture today is based on Module 22 on information processing, how we process certain information into our brains and help us to remember it over time. So, three things with information processing: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Getting information into our memories, restoring it to be able to retain it, and then retrieval, getting the information out of our memory storage. Encoding, storage, and retrieval, how we remember certain information. Now, we encode, all right, as this guy's doing here. He's studying here, encoding, getting the information to his memory. Next, he's actually discussing it in class, being able to think and bring it out of his head, and finally retrieving it for his test, be able to put it out there, okay? That is what the information processing model is: encoding, storage, and retrieval, being able to get it into your head. So, how do we do this, and how does our brain make it happen? Well, we information process by starting with automatic processing. This is your effortless thing. You don't even have to think. Your brain deals with space, time, and frequency. It encodes information. If you look out your window when you're probably watching this, as you should be watching it during the daytime, it's probably sunshine outside or storming or whatever, but it's outside. Your brain automatically knows it's daytime. Okay. And that's it. Space, time, frequency. That's automatic. You don't even have to think about it. Effortful, though, requires conscious effort. Requires effort on your hand to be able to do through rehearsal, through practice, to be able to get it into your head, into your brain. Now, what is rehearsal? That's repetition of information. You are constantly rehearsing over and over and over again to be able to get a concept. That's when in math class, you practice problems. In English class, you read. In theater class, you rehearse, you do. In music classes, you do different phrases of music to be the parts that you really are struggling with over and over again to be able to get it right. Okay, rehearsal is constantly repeating and doing. And in some classes, your teachers may actually rehearse through doing a review every single day. That's rehearsal, getting it into your brain. Overlearning is when you rehearse even after it's been memorized. You constantly do. You could do it with your eyes closed, okay? This is rehearsing past the point of mastery. You know what's going on. You'll know it's there. Even under stress, you sometimes just do it. Overlearning, you're practicing a little too much, but you got it. Distributed practice is where you spread rehearsal out over several sessions by a period of time, where you add a little bit more to each one. When I was in school and in marching band, we didn't do the whole show every time and keep doing it back and forth. We add a little bit and a little bit and a little bit at a time to be able to build up to our entire marching show. Okay, this is where it then helps enhance, and our beginning looks so good. In the end, when we were just learning, it didn't look so good, but we constantly prepared that over the time. Mass practice is when you put all rehearsal together in one long session, cramming. We would do this before marching competitions with the band and do it with the show multiple times. But mass practice, this is like cramming for an exam. It's not always effective. You cannot wait till the night before to be able to cram for an exam. If you're not, you've got to practice over time and distribute and doing that. You cannot cram at one time because it's not going to be as effective and you're not going to remember the information. Some people do, but most people do not. Systematic encoding is encoding for meaning, recalling, recognizing. In this graph here, we see recognizing a word, that'd be 90%. Some people with systematic encoding, this encoding for meaning, you give words. Meaningful enhances recall. When some people go through a mental test, they have to memorize 3 words, and they'll have to recall those words. That's systematic encoding. Acoustic encoding is encoding information based on the sound of the information. This is like, for example, in a music class, you have to recognize score pieces of music, and you may have to remember classical music or rock music or different kind of music. You may have to recall that on an actual assessment or some kind of test whenever it comes to that. Visual encoding is where it's based on images of the information. This is visual learning, where you see something, you remember something. One of those, encoding imagery, would be like 9/11. This picture right here, I remember this exact moment when it happened. It could be positive or negative. Encoding imagery can be positive or negative. This was a negative example. Positive could be a wedding day or a birth of a child, things like that. You're always going to remember visuals that you were going to picture, or later on you look back at a photograph and you say, oh, I remember when that happened. Mnemonic Device is a memory trick or technique that helps you remember something. For example, every good boy does fine is the notes of the lines of a scale. People say you have odd lots of good years is how you can spell psychology. I don't really know who would actually say that, but anyway, different things. When I used to teach U.S. history, my students had to know the land acquisitions on how the country gained our land. It was the Louisiana Territory, Texas region, Oregon Territory, and the Mexican Cession. So I gave my students a mnemonic device. It said, let them own Mexico. Let was Louisiana Purchase. Them was Texas Territory. Own was the Oregon Territory. And then Mexico was the Mexican Cession. And that was the mnemonic device that I taught my students. Peg word system is where you associate items you want to remember with a list of words you already have memorized. You put them to pegs. For example, here, this one's a little bit harder to actually know, but 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe, 3 is a tree, 4 is a door, 5 is a hive, 6 is a pile of sticks, 7 is heaven, 8 is a gate, 9 is a lion, 10 is a hen. That's interesting, and I don't know many people that actually use this. Chunking is organizing information in meaningful units. No, chunking is not when you throw up, okay? But when you put into meaningful units to be able to remember. This is when you're memorizing certain lines, like, for example, the Gettysburg Address, 7 years ago. You keep repeating certain things till you understand it, you have it. There are 3 types of storage systems: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. These storage systems help you to remember certain things. Sensory memory is brief. You remember it for long enough to make a decision for it to be important, then you forget about it. When I was in college, in science class, we had a professor and she made us identify rocks. We had to go to the library during our free time. You don't really have that. That's your study time. Anyway, you go to the library, you had to check out this box of rocks and you had to memorize what kind they were. And she looked at us and told us, she said, I know right now you're going to remember this and then you're probably going to forget it. She said, because next time you'll be looking at this is when you're actually trying to pick out your countertops. And that was true. But anyway, that's what sensory memory is. Putting it in your brain long enough to remember it and then letting it go. Short-term memory is where you contain information that you're consciously aware of before it is stored or permanently forgotten. This is pretty much where you can retain information as long as it's rehearsed. After that, you don't remember it. That's how it was with me with the Gettysburg Address, trying to remember it over time. And the long-term memory, this is permanent, limitless storehouse of memories. It holds memory without conscious effort. This is your long-term, you remember these things, you don't forget them. Life things, memories that you have with your grandparents, your parents, vacation trips, etc. Your happy memories. Flashbulb memories is a memory of an emotional significant moment or event, very similar to what I just said. But this is going to be a flashbulb, very much. And if you've seen the movie Inside Out, this is what you're dealing with right here, a flashbulb memory, where you remember an emotional significant moment. Right, things like that. I can close my eyes right now and picture my high school graduation. I remember my other ones too, but the high school one meant a lot to me. My grandfather passed away right before my freshman year of high school. And my grandmother's still alive, and she was graduate Chapin High School, and so was I that night. And I had want her to be there, and she was. But my grandfather, I had so wished he could see me graduate. I was selected to deliver the invocation at my high school graduation ceremony. And I did, and I was on the stage, the very first one, and I so wish my grandfather could have seen that. But I had a feeling that night, and I can still picture this, where I knew he was standing on that stage with me in spirit. And that was important. That's a flashbulb memory. I remember that night there too, and how wonderful it was. Explicit memory is a facts and experiences. This isn't necessarily your flashbulb, but this is processed the hippocampus, remembering facts and experiences, things you need to be able to recall for certain events. Now, some of these can be recalled with quickly recall, you've got it, and that's long-term memory, and you got facts and personally, things that you have to know, general knowledge, and things that you've experienced, like for breakfast and stuff like that. My grandmother, my dad's mother, She could not remember what she had for breakfast and stuff. Her memory system was kind of going down. She had dementia, which developed into Alzheimer's. Implicit memories, memories of skills and procedures, process through the cerebellum, how to do certain things. For example, you can recall this, you don't really even have to do it. For example, turning on the water socket, how to read, what to be able to do, get up and put your clothes on, things like that. That's your implicit memories. Now, our memory is developed through the hippocampus, and damage to the hippocampus can result in inability to form new memories. But you remember skills of implicit memories. So if you have a damage to the hippocampus, you're not going to be able to form new explicit memories. Things will occur. This can also occur when people have strokes or aneurysms and live through it. These things can be damaged and they can't form new memories, but they can recall older memories. Retrieval is the process of going in and getting that information out. You've got two types of retrieval: recall retrieval and recognition retrieval. And this is where you try to get that information out and to be able to do. Recall is when you search for the information that you've done. For example, when you're on a test, you have to fill in the blank or any kind of recall like that. You're going to have to recall the information that you learned in class. And recognition is when you identify terms that you had earlier. You try to look for them and you try to understand and recognize what you have learned. And that is our mini lecture today on information processing.